there. So today, because I've had some recent diagnoses, and there are a lot of them, I thought I would just make a video today about what those are so that you have an understanding of like what the constellation is that I'm working with. Everybody has a different constellation of health things that they are dealing with. We are all different people who were raised differently with different nutrients, with different trauma, etc. So everybody has their own. That certainly doesn't mean that we can't find things in common, or that learning each other's experiences can't help us to think through our own, or maybe give us leads or directions to go ask new kinds of questions than we've asked before. So this is made in that spirit. It's certainly not to diagnose anything that you have. I'm not a physician. I'm not, even if I were a physician, I'm definitely not your physician. I haven't seen your chart. I don't know anything about you. So some of you I do know things about, but this is just to share in case it can be helpful. I know I find frequently that the most helpful things to me in learning about my own situation is to get really a lot of details about somebody else's health journey. That's been the most helpful thing in the world for me. So this is offered in that spirit. If you don't need to know about my health journey, or you already know it, you might want to skip this video. So I listed a few in the title of this video: dysautonomia, POTS, and tick-borne illness. Bear with me, because a big part of all 8 or so new diagnoses that I have is cognitive slowness and recall issues and memory loss and so forth. So certainly brain fog. So just, you'll have to slog through that with me a little bit, but this will just be probably 15 minutes, partly because I have something to do in 20 minutes. So first off, for anybody who is not aware, dysautonomia is a word that takes a really long time to figure out how to pronounce, first off. So kudos to anybody who can figure it out. It took me quite a long time, and I was raised on phonics. So, but dysautonomia, if you break it down, it means autonomic dysfunction. And what autonomic means in the context of the body is, what does your body know how to do without you telling it to do the thing? Okay. So, your heart is beating, hopefully, maybe at a pretty regular rate, hopefully. There are things that we take for granted that the body does without us having to micromanage those things. When the body goes out of proper autonomic balance, then we have what's called dysautonomia. It means that the body is not doing things without explicit, very particular micromanagement and instruction that it usually would do on its own. So like if I open my eyes, I should be seeing stuff. I don't necessarily. I have blurred vision, but it's intermittent, and sometimes it's mild and sometimes it's quite severe, and it's not in any way predictable. I can say what makes it worse on occasion. Sometimes being outside, it doesn't even have to be sunlight necessarily. It could just be being outside, which is weird. I don't have that sorted out yet. But things like that you would expect to be able to do without having to think about it, but you can't. A lot of people's dysautonomia has really strong elements of very high or very low heart rate or blood pressure. I know that in the past, I can remember times in my past when that was definitely the case for me. I didn't realize that wasn't normal, because I didn't think to talk to anybody about it, and it was probably pre-internet, and who would know? So I knew that I had very low blood pressure and low heart rate. About 40 was real normal for me, and so my body is still getting used to having something around like 60 or 65. To me, that feels like my heart is just beating out of my chest. Like, it feels like very, very difficult for my body. But apparently when you sit down or lie down or stand up, you should have pretty constant heart rate. I do not, and I didn't know that was not normal. That is called POTS, and I forget, I think it's postural for standing up, sitting down, orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Let me look it up for you. I probably should have done that before I got on here, but other people that I know who have it. Oh, I did it right. Oh, badass. Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's postural tachycardia syndrome. It's described by the NHS and the National Health Service in the UK as involving maybe shortness of breath, chest pain, shaking and sweating, noticeable heartbeats or heart palpitations. I always thought that heart palpitations meant that the heart was doing something really different than usual, and either was very arrhythmic or it was kind of very fast. That's apparently not necessarily the case. Just noticeable heartbeats, which, oh my God, like is, I'm all about noticeable heartbeats. I notice all the heartbeats. So, and then fainting or almost fainting, that's referred in clinical terms as syncope. And I do not have that issue, but as a younger person, I definitely had probably whispers of somebody, maybe could have picked up on that a little bit. But some people really have fainting pretty frequently. I do run into things, and that's weird. That dizziness and lightheadedness is pretty common for me. So it's just something to bear in mind. A lot of people end up having a lot of difficulty dexterity wise. And that is, and a lot of people with POTS have that dexterity issue or really extreme pain in the extremities. My doctor refers to that as small fiber neuropathy. And it could probably be called something else. It feels arthritic. You engage in the world in ways that an arthritic person would. And so that's very challenging as well. And of course, the reality is that our elders have had, we are learning as younger people now the pain that our elders have been in. And that's very valuable, and it's really humbling, to think to what my grandparents would have been going through trying to entertain me and so forth, and hurting the way that I now hurt, 20, 30 years before they had their symptoms. So that's one piece. Dysautonomia is good to know about. So if you have things like that, it might be good for you to know about. POTS tends to sit with dysautonomia because I would say POTS is a type of dysautonomia. I believe is fair to say. And then I also mentioned in this one tick-borne illnesses, and tick-borne illness can be lots and lots of kinds. Tick-borne illnesses have also been cross-pollinated, if you will, into mosquitoes. And I recently read a book called Bitten that is a wonderful book and really cool looking, incidentally. So if you like having cool things on your bookshelf, that's not why I bought it. But it's a really excellent book. It's really a page turner, even if you're not a medical nerd at all. It's just a really good narration. It was written by a person named Chris Newby, and she is a health writer, a science writer at Stanford, and has been for a long time. And she is also kind of a previous journalist, but has been in health writing for a long time, but got very sick on Martha's Vineyard during a vacation, as did her husband. And it turned out they had Lyme disease that they got there. And so she had to learn a lot about that. And in the process, she learned that tick-borne illnesses were created into a bioweapon. Ticks have all kinds of mess in them that they just don't care, and they're fine. But pretty much everything in a tick is just terrible for human beings. So, but there was a main scientist who was, Nobel level guy from Switzerland who chose to work in the United States, and then ultimately got pulled into making bioweapons. And then parts of how that was tested, he was involved in making DEET and making these bioweapons. And the idea was to make people sick enough that it kind of overwhelmed the health system, but not sick enough. And there were some people died, but not where anybody would be able to really trace what the thing was or do anything about it. And that's exactly what he achieved. He admitted to it in his last days before he died. But it really did that. And what they would do partly is they would put the lime um, and all the rickettsia, which is, if you're thinking of rickets, it's related to that. It's rickets is a type of rickettsia. It was kind of discovered by a guy with that name. And it was placed into, they cross-pollinated the ticks with lots of other illnesses from other types of ticks, so that when they dropped, they like airdropped a bunch of ticks and then they traced them to see how far they could get, but they tested it in the United States, and so like that's not good. And in Europe, there were European versions of it. Some of it was, Cold War weaponry and so forth. And it doesn't seem to have occurred to anyone that our people would get sick or that would backfire or, be a problem. I don't know why. So maybe that's what happens when you don't have any women in the room. I don't know. But anyway, so it's a really fascinating book. It also gives you breaks from there's some heavy science in there that, I kind of had to read lightly or something just to get through it, but there's something there kind of for everybody, because she's also a really wonderful narrator and storyteller, shares about her family and kind of what they went through. And it's not victim-y at all, it's just like, this is what happened. And so that is very helpful. And to find out that tick-borne illness is so common, because it went into mosquitoes too. They did it with mosquitoes too. Well, everybody's had a mosquito bite, right? So that is one of the illnesses that I have been diagnosed with recently. The doctor indicated that it must have been in my body for a very long time. She didn't say all the reasons why, although my symptoms, have been going on a while. But she did say that well, strike that strike that part of the sentence. When I look up which one I know that I have, I'm not testing real high for Lyme activation right now, but I have something called Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Well, I don't get fevers really, so that's not how it presented, and I've rarely gotten a fever in my whole life. I'm not good at, to have a fever, you have to have an immune system, and I don't really have one. so it's not that. But when I look up Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and when I've talked to friends in the medical field who have been closer to it than I have, even though I work some in the medical field, it is terrifying. Like Rocky Mountain spotted fever is freaking terrifying. So all I can figure, and what I'm really processing and have some gratitude for, and also some weird grief around, is, wow, like all these years that I've been eating as clean as I can, that I was raw vegan for 8 years, although I was drinking at the time. I mean, I had alcohol in my diet at the time, but I was eating super duper clean, and have, did yoga for a very long time before I got injured. And I've been very conscientious about these things, and I know more about nutrition and supplementation and health than almost anybody that I meet. Although I love meeting somebody who knows more than me, that's for sure. But within that, what I'm finding when I look at the people who are presenting with quick, like they get bitten by a tick, they immediately get the Rocky Mountain spotted fever, they get on antibiotics, and it can clear. But I've had it for so long, we don't know when it happened. And the fact that it hasn't presented in these serious, like, emergency room types of ways is really mind-boggling. Because again, like, I don't really have an immune system, but I have done all of these things through my life to minimize symptoms, right? And the fact that I've managed that is really it kind of brings me to tears. It's really amazing that I've made it this far. So that's 3 of the diagnoses, and kind of categories. POTS is more a specific diagnosis, but that's 2 categories and one specific. And the Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever is a specific. It's sometimes just called by its acronym RMSF. And we can talk more about the tick-borne illnesses in another video. And we didn't even get to the other, big list of diagnoses. So we'll do those another day. But hope that's helpful to somebody. I know it was really helpful to me when somebody shared that book with me, and that was right before I ended up getting diagnosed as well. So it was very helpful to know just at least a little bit and know kind of where to go next for more information. So hope that's helpful. We'll talk another day when I have some more energy. I have to go lie down for 3 minutes before I have to speak to human beings. Bye.